So we gathered on this auspicious occasion of Prabhupada's Tirobhava, and I want to briefly inform our listeners as to the anatomy of the discussion that we will conduct this evening. And what I mean by that is that we will proceed first with some discussion, description of Prabhupada's, what we can refer to as his ideal. And with regard to that, I will refer back sometime, some centuries, to the sector that his family from Vaishnava sector is connected with. And for that, I'll read a few words from my forthcoming book, one of the chapters of which deals with some of the history of the followers of the and then we will segue into the Madhya Lila of Prabhupada's manifest pastimes, which really, I would say, began with his acceptance of the sannyas order and his very ardent desire to, as he understood it, fulfill the order of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and spread the dispensation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Western world. And as we begin that section, we will break from the discussion and sing about it. We will sing a song that turns out to be my favorite. This afternoon, earlier, I was cooking for Prabhupada today. Something that was dear to him, the guy himself, and in English it's called burnt bottom subject. So it gets a little roasted. So, but while we do that, she asked me, his sister, what's your favorite bhajans? And I said, well, there are different bhajans for different moods, and we got bhajans according to Guru, bhajans that glorify Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, those that glorify Krishna, those that may be composed by our Guru. We might think one is a favorite at one time, another relative to our mood. That's how I answered it first, and I thought, but actually, there's one song that's written by my Guru. It is about his Guru, and subsequently glorifies Lord Chaitanya and Radha and Krishna. That's the best of all songs. So I'm going to sing that song, and the song has really two major sections. In the first section of the song, aside from the refrain, which is very special, very clever, where Prabhupada seeks the benediction of the power of Shakti of Krishna to do bidding of his Guru Maharaj, which is to spread Gauravani, the teachings of the words of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu the world over. The first half of that song, it is a good example of prayer of subject that we've been discussing for days now, which is Sharanagati. Sharanagati being the lesson that sadhakas speaks loudly to sadhakas from the Prakat Lila of village Govardhan, lifting of Govardhan Hill. Is, of course, as we know, we're discussing Lila that picks up 4 chapters of the Srimad Bhagavatam's 10th canto, and it's all about the residents foregoing other ideas of maintenance, which primarily previous to this date, if you will, in Lila, they thought was derived from the Indra Yagya. Krishna changed their minds by his charm, and such they took shelter of him as their only maintain appropriate way. This is the central focus. Sweet Lakshan, the principal characteristic of the sixfold Sharanagati. This is the Angi, the body of it, the other 5 aspects of the Anga serve it. However, some say, even in their own sampradaya, sometimes that Rakshikshati Dishpashpo, another Anga, if you will, is the Angi, which means except only Krishna as my protector. And these are both defined Brajavasis demonstrating their Sharanagati by accepting Krishna as the protector, as they accepted him as the maintainer, and subsequently, of course, the deluge from Indra came to threaten him. So, in Prabhupada's song that he wrote on the ocean, crossing the ocean, the first part of it is a good example of Sharanagati and Gurunishta. And then we will proceed with some further discussion about the extraordinary preaching, if you will, campaign of Srila Prabhupada, and that will take us to his Antya-lila, which then we will call for us to see the second part of the song, his longing for his ideal is very sweetly presented. This is not a poem, a song Prabhupada wrote for public consumption, but we've got it. And so making it public and celebrating it. It's a treasure. It's a great treasure for all Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So that is the anatomy of the class. So, the signal, we'll start the song. I think it must be passed out amongst you, right? Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.
So, of course, Prabhupada is a historical figure, if you will. Some of the, he was born in 1896, and so late 19th century, and became prominent in the middle, the second half of the 20th century, and he was born, of course, in West Bengal, in Calcutta, and he wrote about his family life. His family name is Day. The Days and the Mullocks, or he said, at the time that the British made Calcutta, what's it called now? Kolkata. Their capital. By the time that they made that their capital, the Days and the Mullocks, who were prominent Vaishya families, really they were what's called, what's the term? Mercantile, but Kayastas. Well, they were mercantile. Maybe. Anyway, mercantile class. And this mercantile class was a special object of the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or excuse me, Nityananda Prabhu. Chaitanya Bhagavata has said that Nityananda appeared in the world to deliver the mercantile class of Saptagram. At that time, Saptagram means literally 7 villages. There were 7 prominent villages, and there was a port there along the Ganges that was very conducive for trade. So the Dutch came there at that time, I believe, maybe the French, coming to the planet, right? Arriving there. Some very beautiful descriptions from some of the Europeans, I think it was the French, about that area. I had the opportunity to look into that some time ago. It's coming to my mind now. Very beautiful descriptions of what they experienced. Things like, and there was a temple in every house. And they described in their own words how they gathered together with lights and song every evening. So this was all the way they describe it. After the Nityananda Prabhu showered his grace on the mercantile community that had been disenfranchised socially and religiously from the Hindu sector by the Balal Singh, who was the ruler at the time. So they were in a difficult situation. This is characteristic then of Nityananda. There's two sides, in one sense, to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dispensation. His own dispensation, which, in order to facilitate, he adopted the sannyas order, which garners respect. First time I went to Calcutta, we came from Australia, me, of course, and others, and for the first festival in Manipur, which the place was underprepared for the whole story. But anyway, it was worth going to. But we arrived in Madras, and from there we took the train in Calcutta. I just remember very vividly. It was a sea of white dhotis, men in white dhotis, just a sea. You wouldn't see anybody in shirt, pants, anything like that. A sea of white dhotis. So you can imagine if the saffron building appeared, stand out. This was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's ploy, if you will, or he adapted the sannyas as a means to bring attention to himself and create, let's say, in order to create a teachable moment. So you'd see the sannyas, I can learn something here with the sages. This was his idea. And it facilitated him greatly, but it limited him at the same time, because there are strict mode of conduct and whatnot for a sannyasi that he will not in any way be thought to be morally compromised or just compromised at all, dependent, for example, on a particular household family, or beholden to a king or anything of the sort, completely independent. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Bhagavan, Sadashvara Sri Bhagavan Sasayamayam Chaitanya Krishna Jagati Paratatvam Paramniha. Chaitanya Charitamrita Krishna's Kavi. This is his Vasudeva Shlok. Chaitanya Charitamrita describes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all 6 opulences, right? Sadashvara Purna. And among them, of course, we have wealth, strength, beauty, knowledge, renunciation, wealth, strength, beauty, knowledge, renunciation, and fame, right? And so, with regard to renunciation, we have to think a little bit. Krishna's Swami Bhagavan, how do you pronounce? Well, the completely independent Swaraj, but it's very overtly the case and obvious in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he accepted the sannyasa order, and the measure of his renunciation was frightening to the older senior sannyasis that came to were attracted to him, in particular Jagannath, the other places also Katwa, Parmanipuri, also in Navadvip. But he's only 24 years old. Yet one of your senses are pretty well, pretty strong, right? But the measure in which he exhibited control of their renunciation was frightening to these other sannyasis. But so it facilitated creating a teaching moment as he so desired, but it also limited him because, well, you can't go just anywhere as a sannyasi. If you go to a brothel, well, people think, what's a sannyasi doing at the brothel? They won't think he's going there to deliver the people. That's not what will come to their mind. I saw the sannyasi at the brothel the other night. They're undeliverable. Why would you go there? That might be the thought. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's outreach extended to such people as well, and more to all beings. Right? When he made a plan, when he called out to Haridas and said, "My mission is a failure. I've come to distribute the holy name." But that's only good for the animate beings. What about the inanimate beings? How they will be liberated? Thinking we had. And Haridas said, no, rest assured. When you chant the holy name, like in the forest, you hear that echo? It's not an echo. That's the inanimate living beings chanting that. Mahaprabhu was pacified. Because of his compassionate heart. So, but he was limited. So, as I say, couldn't go everywhere without being suspect, right? And so this other self, extended himself to when he told to marry and go anywhere and everywhere. Of course, what you did, house to house, door to door, falling down, begging people to accept Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, going to the brothel. It said in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if you see him in the brothel with a standing next to a prostitute, don't ever think from him that he's there for anything other than to convert her. Right? And he was very unorthodox in many respects. Famous story of Chaitanya Bhagavat also. He appeared in the social religious for an assembly of devotees, family members, and so forth. Sachi, Sita, Malini, and others, and naked, oblivious to it. Well, I think he was wearing just copies, right? And oblivious to the fact that he wasn't dressed as a baby. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thought, oh, some people in the audience may disrespect him. That would be a big problem for them. So he took his copies and tore it up and said, tie this around your arm, put it around your neck, and you'll be able to, all your senses will be controlled. So there were a number of occasions which he went out of his way to explain to the devotees the position of Nityananda, who was active rather than unorthodox way he wore his Baha'u'llah kind of outwardly on his on his side of the day. And his associates were similar in this regard. And we turn to them now in the section I'm going to read from, because it's from this community of associates, Dwadasa Gopal, the mercantile community, largely, not all of them, some of them were Brahmins, but they were living in the Saptakram area. And Nityananda Prabhu came and delivered it. And as I was saying, Prabhupada said by the time the British had made Kolkata their capital, half of all of Calcutta was they or milk families. All these, they were gold merchants. And so where Prabhupada was born, and you go to another country, Balaram beats so forth. Patron saint of Prabhupada's family life, and he was one of the ones who was the closest associated with Nityananda with regard to the wide dispensation that was characteristic of Nitai. So let's hear a little bit about these extraordinary people. This is they were like Nityananda, these associates. They wore their bhava, their inner life, sometimes uncheckably, on their outer sadhaka dehas. So some description here, right? Unlike the Vrindavan Goswamis, who exhibited a standard of dress and decorum in their perfected sadhaka dehas of Gaur Lila that was distinct from their meditative siddha deha as manjaris in Krishna Lila, the Dwadasa Gopals of Gaur Lila, much like Nityananda Prabhu himself, wore their Sakyarati on their sadhaka dehas in some measure. What do we mean by this? Well, Krishnadas Kaviraj describes them as bearing buffalo horns and herding sticks, adorned in cowherd dress and crowned with plumes of peacocks. Similarly, Vrindavan Das describes them as decorated with armlets, bracelets, ankle bells, ankle bangles, and garlands, bearing in their hands sticks, flutes, horns, and ropes. However, let us think deeply about this. It appears from artistic depictions from their time that such dress was only occasional, when their bhava just could not be checked. It came out. times decorated and stuff like this. Uncheck. The worshipful painting, for example, Patita Patita Pavana Udarandata, that adorns this altar in Saptagram, West Bengal, depicts him in more traditional sadhaka, in the sadhaka day, head shaved, adorned with Urdhva tilak, and a necklace of tulsi beads, his limbs, torso, and forehead marked with impressions of Krishna's name and lotus feet, and dressed in white cloth with a japamala of tulsi in his hand. We're doing the japa. Jai. This is the right hand man of Nityananda and the patron saint Prabhupada. So they would go annually, family to Udarnatapur, and with respect to Udarnata. We'll hear a little bit more about him. Furthermore, despite descriptions of the Gopal's eccentric dress and decorum, Vrindavan Das also makes clear their accompanying saintliness. They had no engagement other than non-sankirtan. Symptoms of Krishna praying, tears, trembling, and horripilation were constantly visible on their bodies. Typically, the sattvic bhavs of tears and horripilation can be observed from time to time in the sadhaka deas of intermediate and superlative bhaktas, whereas other sattvic bhavs more typically manifest in their internal meditative siddha deas. Indeed, all of Sri Rupa's examples of the manifestation of sattvic bhavs in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu involve siddha deas in Krishna Lila. The multiple and intensified ecstatic transformations of Sri Chaitanya Krishna in Sadhaka Daya are thus all the rarer and more extraordinary. And the same is true to a lesser extent with the ecstasy of the Dwadasa Gopals, simultaneous trembling, weeping, horripilation, immobilization, and so on. Furthermore, much of the Gopals' unconventional behavior was not possible for ordinary persons.
First turn off airplane mode.
Or developing sadhakas. For example, chasing and riding on the backs of Bengal tigers, playing with cobras, remaining submerged in water for more than 24 hours, and so on. Such are the descriptions of these Dwadasa Gopals. So if you say, why are you dating cowherd boys? You should be dressed like sadhakas. You're not going to ask them to see other things they can do. These are extraordinary people. Now, one thing about these type of descriptions, like those I just mentioned, riding on tigers, someone in the modern age may say, these type of descriptions obviously are exaggerations. These things, this is some kind of poetry or something like that. And I don't agree with that. But one thing we can say for sure is one of those Gopals in the 19th and second half, particularly of the 20th century, whose day of disappearance we're talking about now, in historical time of the present, there's no getting around his miracles. The story that we are telling tonight is a chapter of Gaudiya Vaishnavism that is as miraculous or more than anything you can pull out from the past, right? And it's undeniable. It was there for millions of people to see, and thousands of followers that were gathered up in the wave of his ecstatic love and commitment to the order of his guru, and the extent to which, as we hear, he received the power, as requested, of Nityananda to do the work that he did. So, let me read then a little bit about one of the contributions of the Dwadasa Gopals that we can much appreciate. Despite their ecstasy-induced eccentricity, the Dwadasa Gopals appearing in Gopal Lila were also learned men who exemplified high standards of ritualistic worship within their lineages. Gauridas Pandit, who was a Brahmin, is an excellent example of this. It was through Gauridas Pandit
that the now widespread ritual worship or archana, the images of Gaur and Nityananda, was first instituted in the Gaudiya Sampradaya. Gauridas Pandit Vijay. Gauridas was the vehicle through whom Gaur Nitai made themselves accessible to their devotees as archa avatars, as the deity. Sri Chaitanya told Pandit Ji to gather neem wood from Nadi and carve images of himself and Nitai out of it. Doing so, Gauridas and his associates established the images through the Pran Pratishtha ritual. Gauridas then served the images, cooking for them, decorating them daily, often conversing with them as well. And Bhakti Ratnakar relates how the deities spoke back to Gauridas. Quote, "O friend, Subal," this is Gauridas, who is in Krishna Lila, Krishna's most intimate, coward friend. "Do you remember your previous life?" the deity said to him. "Can you remember the immense joy we had herding cows on the banks of the Jamuna?" Saying this, the deity showed themselves as Krishna and Balaram, black and fair complexions. In those forms, they held horns, flutes, and canes, and they were adorned with peacock plumes and other ornaments. How beautiful they looked in the dress of gopas. Beholding their beauty, Gauridas was overwhelmed with Ananda. What do you like to call it? History books. Furthermore, the divine images express distress at seeing Gauridas labor so in love, especially with regard to his elaborate cooking, and thus they suggested that they would be happy if he just offered whatever could be prepared without much effort. They were pained by the labor of his love in serving them. Now you should think about this when you think, oh, Gaur Nitai worship is simple and easy. Yes, they said that. Maybe make a prayer to Gauridas Pandit. Bless me, please now, as you did, that they would say that to you, people about you. They might feel that way about me. When he desired Gauridas to decorate them with valuable jewels, they told him that, they preferred the simplicity of flowers. Such intimate and extraordinary interactions between Gauridas and the sacred images of Gaur Nitai were the norm in his worship. And his Seva Puja had a significant influence on the outreach of the Dinamic Ram, despite Gauridas' otherwise reclusive nature. Read one other anecdote here for a moment about Gauridas. Who is Gauridas? From Vijay Krishna Goswami, his book, A Walk Through History, we learn that one day, when Gauridas was drenched in ecstatic tears of love for Nimai, for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the young Pandit Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, took Gauridas to the bank of the Ganges and had him look into the water to see his own reflection, thereby reminding Gauridas of his previous life. Reflected on the water, Gauridas saw the face of Subal, as if a second image of Radha. Then gradually he remembered his coward life and his Radha-like appearance. Subal looks like Radha. His head, his arms, his legs, his feet. He looks like, so he often at times dresses like Radha for this assisting Krishna in their attempts to meet with one another, given difficulties that arise in the social religious system in Braj. Very intimate associates of Krishna here of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now we turn for a moment to Udar Dattadas. Patita Pala. That's these pictures here again. Again, this is now the family saint of Prabhupada's family, and they would go annually to pay respect to Udar Datta. Prabhupada wrote a letter to those in charge of Udar Datta poor, and he expressed in that letter a desire to purchase more land so that they would have enough land to grow their own rice and food and secure the worship of the deity, into perpetuity. It's a nice letter. This is Prabhupada 1976 expressing this desire. I don't think his funds has been able to do that, so we'll try at some point to fill that ardent desire of his. Unlike Goridas, however, who was very introverted, but did something very outward for all of us, right? Giving this deities to worship. Udarandata Thakur, another prominent member of the Blessed School, was very outgoing in nature. He hailed from Satyagam, an area in West Bengal consisting of 7 villages, and had an extensive mercantile community, primarily involved in trading gold. Centuries later, with the help of this community, the British were able to establish Calcutta as the center of their influence in India. As I mentioned earlier, during the 15th and early 16th century, the community's social standing was respectable, and it was largely a nominal, name-only Vaishnava community. Its Hindu ruler, Balal Sain, patronized both Sanskrit learning and Vaishnavism. However, a dispute between Sain and the Satyagraha community resulted in his sullying the Suvarnabhana community's social standing, making day-to-day living much more difficult for them. And it was Nityananda Ram who came to their rescue. There in Satyagraha, he met Udarandata Thakur. Like the other Gopals, Udarandata had extraordinary character. When Nitai visited Satyagraha with his associates amid Nagar Sankirtan, Udarandata Thakur immediately came forward and fell at Nitai's lotus feet, bathing him with tears flowing from the restless river of his heart's ananda. At every moment, Nitai blessed Udaran, placing his hand over his head and holding his eternal Gopal Subahu, that's his inner name, now appearing in another Leela. Arise, do not cry anymore. From today on, you are my beloved servant. Then Nitai changed his name from Dvikar, which is the name for the sun, the daymaker, to Udara, which means gives more life than the sun, more generous. Together they visited Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri, and on that occasion Mahaprabhu kept Udarandata with him for 6 months and ate whatever he cooked. Udarandata Thakur ki jai. However, in 1516, Gaurasundar ordered Nityananda to return to Puri, not to return to Puri the following year, but instead to focus his attention entirely on delivering the mercantile community of West Bengal, acknowledging Udarandata as Nitai's principal assistant. And eventually the entire community followed Udarandata's lead by accepting Nitai as their guide. Thus, the community's social status was taken above and beyond caste designation, which they had become outcasts in relation to, as it embraced the singular ritual. Varnashram is full of hundreds of rituals, difficult to follow them all. The singular ritual of Sri Krishna Sankirtan and its Vaishnavism, the community's Vaishnavism, from being nominal, became centered on Sakyarati. Sri Udarandata preoccupied himself with only the very essence of Dharma, Jivadaya, kindness to others, and Krishnanam and Jivadaya. His kindness to others made him famous not only in Satyagraha, but throughout all of Bengal, where together with the other Gopals, he propagated the all-inclusive Sankirtan ritual. This propagation resulted in the formation of numerous centers of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, pursuing Sakyarati in the service of Lord and Nityananda Ram. Perhaps the best example of Jivadaya is his famous Anna Chatra, a kitchen and food storage arrangement that covered 10 acres of land, from which he fed thousands upon thousands of poor villagers suffering from the great drought of West Bengal in the first quarter of the 16th century. Along with feeding the multitudes, he also constructed housing for thousands of poor and suffering villagers in Badravan forest along the banks of the Saraswati. His dedication to and taste for Krishna Nam was such that after the departure of Nitai from Satyagraha, Thakur chanted throughout the day and night in solitary bhajan, sleeping for only 30 minutes a day and subsisting only on milk. Although a Sanskrit scholar and deeply acquainted with Srimad Bhagavatam, he could not find time to write anything himself. In this regard, he's been compared to Bhagavath Bhatta Goswami, who alone amongst the 6 Goswamis made no literary contribution for the same reason. The poet, Vasu Ghosh, describes the Thakur thus. In Kaichara, he built a kutir and lived there, a hut. His head shaved, wearing only coping and outer cloth, his forehead adorned with beautiful tilak. Around his neck were 3 strands of tulsi and the straps of a bag for his japamala. Then, from Nirjan Bhajan, solitary bhajan, Udaran Thakur again became a public figure. Powered by the Shakti of Nityananda within his heart, he preached extensively, especially in Katwa, where he is said to have visited every village and every home, bearing the good tidings of Gaur and Nityananda Ram. In Udaranpur, he established the deity of Satbuj Gaur, Gaur with 6 arms, 2 of Ram, 2 of Krishna, and 2 of Gaur himself, to teach the public that Gaur was Swayam Bhagavan, Avatari, and all avatars. On one side of the Sadbuj Gaur, he placed a murti of Nitai, on the other side a murti of Gadadhar. Thus the Thakur was an indispensable instrument in Nityananda Ram's outreach, which resulted in a flood of Sakyarati throughout Bengal. The patron saint of Prabhupada's family. And as I was saying earlier, while Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas and lived within the confines of that, that creating a teachable moment, which enabled him, for example, also to speak to other sannyasis and to convert the head Pujari of the Ramanuja Sampradaya, Venkatapati, wife. And he talked a bit Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He was ministering to the Brahminical class, the educated people, Sanskritists and so forth, Prakashananda, Benares, which is the seat of learning and so forth. So this was his kind of realm. The other half, the common people, that was the Dhananda's outreach, and prominent in that outreach was this sense of jivadaya, just ordinary kindness to other living beings. So you find this like social welfare, Vaishnavism, all come together, chant Nam Sankirtan, and we'll feed you all. Not only that, we'll house you all, and we'll build the houses. This is Uddar Thakur. So, and it was totally transcend caste designations and gender designations. There were no such, with regard to who could participate and to what extent. This is another that was characterized. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he was speaking to the Brahmins within the Varnashram. They were more careful. The lady was singing, and he would run after her because she was singing about Krishna with his servant. When else would stop, don't go there. People will miss it. And so, but I did not really care for that. Nobody stopped him. So we see this also in Prabhupada's dispensation. Even some Gaudiyas are, Varnashram is not something that has much bearing on us. We're not on ashrams, but 50, 60, even 100 years ago, it had more of a hold on the Indian public and the non-Vaishnavas. But Bhaktisiddhanta had to deal with that and further distinguished Vaishnavism from Brahmanism and so on. But Prabhupada, and so I've seen examples of Gaudiya Vaishnavas who saw us, the white people, me, from outside of the Varnashram, Prabhupada's disciple, and they thought, if we step in his shadow, we will be contaminated. We had some karmic perspective on it.
We wouldn't eat, what we cooked. Prabhupada was very, 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 very dismissive of that. Prabhupada was not a Brahmin. He was from Vaishya family. But he conducted himself like a Brahmin to the extreme. He would frighten the Brahmin when he conducted himself with his habits of eating daily and so on and so forth. Just to show that, we're that and much, much more. It's a whole interesting discussion, but suffice to say at this moment, we'll take to our discussion. Nityananda Prabhu's dispensation was broad and wide, and there's a parallel between that and what we probably do to come amongst us, for example. So this is the background of Prabhupada's family, and although some of us as Prabhupada's disciples, like to think that he came to us from the Loka Vrindavan, and it couldn't be the case. We used to think of him like that. He himself depicted himself otherwise repeatedly and wrote about it in letters and also in his books, referring to the famous verse of the Gita that says, well, if you're not perfect, Arjuna asks Krishna, well, you want me to practice yoga? And he's really talking about bhakti yoga in that chapter. But if I do that, I give up the Varnashram, I might be culpable because I give up the Varnashram and I failed in yoga, which isn't so easy because you got to capture the mind. And that's like trying to arrest the wind. So I'm a little apprehensive to go forward. And Krishna said, listen, but the yoga I'm teaching you, even if you do it imperfectly, you get more than if you perfectly follow the Varnashram. You will go to heaven if you imperfectly follow it. And then you'll come back to earth and a family that facilitates the continuation of your practice. Or he said, if your practice is almost perfect, but then you take one more birth in a family of transcendentalists in Vaishnava family. So Prabhupada used to depict himself like that, quoting that I was born in the Vaishnava family. He's very, very, probably very affectionate to his father and mother. And his father was reared on the side of only good way. He would invite sadhus to come to his home without much, if any, discrimination. Is that guy really a sadhu? He's dressed like a sadhu. If he was dressed like a sadhu, he'd come to my home. This is probably used to tell us that this was his own, culture that he came from. That you go out and if you go to work and you come home on the train and you're sitting next to someone and you have your japama on and you're chanting and you're conducting yourself in such a way that people who want to know about you, you get into a discussion with them, invite them to come to your house then. Get off the train with you. I mean, what? All that, especially now. But that's how he would, that was life in Bengal. Invite them to come to your home and have dinner for them. Invite them to stay the night, maybe 2-3 nights. And after that, they'll probably become devotees. That's the kind of devotee you should be. That's what he wanted us, by example. So what was the point? So
Prabhupada's father was very.
So Prabhupada's father, right? So he would invite sadhus. If they looked like a sadhu, you'll come to my home tonight, And not all of them were that saintly. That's people used to say, well, if you're born in only real gurus are born in India. Well, there's more bogus gurus per capita in India than anywhere in the world. You can be sure of that. So Prabhupada, as a result of that, he got a sanskar for hearing from sadhus, but he also got a little bit of not sure about all these guys. But again, his father erred on the side of caution. You don't want to develop a samskar for not inviting Vaishnavas, not seeking association of sadhus. So you might as well try and invite them.
and not up to standard, maybe you can help them, right? So anyway, this was something in Prabhupada's life that caused him to hesitate a little bit in terms of the religious life that his father wanted of him. When he was younger, not at the age of really hearing from sadhu, was speaking philosophy and so forth, he was very, like a lot of your, those here, young kids, they just like Krishna, they want to do everything, right? Prabhupada's stream was, and he told me this once, he called me to his quarters, and he was lying on his bed in Mayapur, and he said, what? He just started talking to me like this. He said, when I was young, then I wanted to go to get a ticket to the train to Jagannath Puri to take part in the Rath Yatra. But I was too young to go. My father was busy. So my father bought me a toy rock cart. That's kind of toys that Prabhupada had. A toy Roth chariot for taking Jagannath. He said, and so in my area, my neighborhood, in the courtyard, I performed the Rath Yatra. He said, and all of the adults came and they were charmed by that, but they didn't think it was real. And then his eyes became very big. He said, but it was real. And I used to keep, he said, that Rath card by my bed. And I would go to sleep and then I'd wake up and reach out and make sure it was there. And then I look at it, it's still there. And he said, now I'm doing it all over the world. But when he got a little older, then he got, of course, the Gandhi's movement was going on. Every young man and woman were just taken up by Gandhi's Swaraj, his idea of liberation from the political oppression, political colonization on the part of the British and so forth. Meanwhile, Bhaktisiddhanta was dismissing that idea of liberation and exposing the limitations of it and the political interpretation, if you will, on the part of Gandhi of the Gita. And he was actually capturing young men and women of college education, pulling them out of the Gandhi revolution, right? That was not an easy task. That was not an easy task. And Gaudiya Vaishnavism was going on, of course, in the Dhammas, but not really we're near the same extent, in Calcutta, places of Maya, as they were thought. And that's where educated people were going. So village people were joining, that something you could do. What would you like to do? I think I'll be a son. That might work. And then if I do it hard enough, maybe I'll become leader of the mob at some point, and then I'll have a pension. So it's not, I'm not criticizing, but that's it. About what they think about people think. It's not like always a whole conversion that some young Bengali becomes a Gaudiya, like it is for us. Got something to add to it all. Anyways, Prabhupada. So a role to play. He said Chaitanya's benediction has been moved from India to the West. They're not paying attention. We're getting ahead now into his preaching where the sannyas we look like they've been transferred to the West. So very, very pleased with how the students were coming forward, just giving everything. But back up a minute, he was a little bit put off by the sadhus, right? Until one school friend said, hey, I met a sadhu and this one's different. This is what the British were even saying. There's a British lady who wrote a famous letter that's been preserved somewhere. I've seen it, but back to her associates and said that in England, said, I've met a different sadhu amongst these Indians. I met a different, he's different. And he was educated, right? And tried to enter into her head and speak to about Gaudiya Vaishnavism from there, right? In other ways that it had not been, she had not been ministered to. And she said, and he even has a British toilet. So he would adopt things, the car, riding in the car, wearing patent leather shoes, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati thought, because that was the cool thing to do, or whatever. So he wanted, people be to some extent like them, that and bring some mamata, some minus between ourselves and the British. We're not that different from you, and of course, encourage them to chant and so forth. So Prabhupada was reluctant. Oh my God, he read so many sadhus, but he went, and it was life-changing for them. Darshan, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada.
Yeah.
And so eventually, of course, Prabhupada married and had a couple of children, and was a Grihastha initiated member of the great mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And given his position as a Grihastha, he could not be fully involved in mobs, where there was hundreds of who knows how many brahmacharis and sannyasins. It's just like uncharacteristic of Gaudiya Vaishnava preaching centers or gatherings, and educated people. Prabhupada was a college-educated person, Tirobhava educated person. Kinchen Krishnadas Babaji was close to two of them, very famous. He was an educated person and a track star. So these kind of people were coming to Gaudiya Vaishnavism through the kind of preaching, the outreach of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that was giving shape to the ideas of Bhakti Vinod, to take Gaudiya Vaishnavism, put it on the world stage with other world religions. It belongs there. It's actually the main speaker of the age. And this is his efforts of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur dedicated himself to do that. And it took some dynamism and some out-of-the-box thinking, some of which was to do things that other Gaudiyas objected to and so forth, but it had the kind of result that we're part of, right? I was among those who were, how to say it, instrumental in fulfilling the vision of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, there will come a day in Mayapur when people from different cultures around the world will sing and dance in Nam Sankirtan, chanting Jai Satchidananda. Jai Satchidananda. Jai Satchidananda. And that happened in 1974. And we chanted on Bhaktisiddhanta, the only road going through Mayapur along the Ganga. And it was very, very rural at the time. We did Nam Sankirtan. We chanted Jai Satchidananda from Germany, from London, from France, from the United States, and so forth, from Canada, and other countries. And the Bengali ladies would come out with a tray of sweets, place them some yards ahead in front of Nam Sankirtan, and offer them to pranam, and then pick them up and give them to the devotee, all the way as we went, and we came back. It was just so beautiful. There, of course, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, I am just a sweeper in the Sankirtan of Panchatattva that he would see, right, in Navadvip. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, what did he say? And I'm one straw in a broom. Bhaktisiddhanta. What is that place? Who are those people? Or Nityananda ki jai. Or partially jai. Of course, all of the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they were not all born in Navadvip. They all have their Vrindavan Swarups, right? Vrindavan Leela. And Navadvip is not Vrindavan. But why they weren't all born in Navadvip? Because the Navadvip Leela is sweet, Madhurya, but it's Audari. It's meant to go other places. So Mahotsava was arranging people who were born in other places. And we came to see that extended outside of India also. And Prabhupada came to collect them. So it's in the whole country. And that was, of course, what he understood to be the order of Bhaktisiddhanta. As I said, he was living outside of the mission because he had his family to support and so forth. But whenever in any of his spare time, he was going to the mission. He had his Bhagavatam at home. Of course, you know the story. His wife sold his Bhagavatam to buy tea biscuits because Prabhupada could provide sufficiently whatever he was away on. So that was the last straw for him. Tea for me, she took the tea and we got the meat. And so Prabhupada walked out. And I'm telling you, the community in which he lived, the area, they did not understand who he was. He was a religious person, a religious Gaudiya, and that was prominent in him. With a few children, he had his days limit that he created, some kind of sign and toothpaste he made. He was a chemist. He wasn't a chemist, but anyway, he put that together. And he was marketing that, and then getting all expendable, or what do they call it, extra money, all going to Gaudiya Math to help, right? And when his wife sold the Bhagavatam, then he said, "Dear me," and he walked out. He walked out, and the people in the community, they just couldn't believe it. They didn't understand what was going on, to what extent he had the burning desire to fulfill the desire of his Guru Maharaj and to participate in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan. He couldn't contain it. He walked out. It just, their minds were blown. They were just shocked. Just imagine if your father just walked out, and that was it. And where did he go for religious life? It's amazing to them. And so he became homeless. Of course, he associated himself with Gaudiya Math and so forth, and he was writing things. He spent time writing. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had seen some things that he wrote, and he told the other disciples that should be published. Some of the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur liked his writing, and they wanted to confer upon him the title Bhaktisiddhanta. But some others objected that we are Guru Maharaj's Bhaktisiddhanta. So Srila Maharaj was asked to intervene because he was very famous for this kind of thing, giving names and making adjustments, creating harmony. And so they brought to him and he said, he could be named Bhakti, there's nothing wrong with it. But the objection of others was also reasonable. Probably wasn't pushing for that. So he said, but therefore he should be named Bhakti Vedanta. He should get that title, which is the same meaning. We became a Bhakti Vedanta. Later, when as a kind of a Vanaprastha trying to fulfill the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta, whom he had written to just 2 weeks before the Thakur left the world, and asked Prabhupada if he could give me some service. And Prabhupada wrote back and said, I think if you could preach in English, that would be good for you and others. And Prabhupada took that as an order. And on one other occasion at Radhakund, in the Thurakram, he pulled Prabhupada aside. Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta pulled my Guru aside and said, I built the Bhag Bazaar moth, the marble moth in Calcutta. It was a big thing. It's a huge story. He said, but now they're fighting over the rooms. Who will stay in what room? He said, so we should sell the marbles and print books. So if you ever get money, print books. And that was like Prabhupada's mantra. I got money, print books. I got money, we print books. So he was writing at this time as a Vanaprastha, writing his Back to Godhead magazine, living in Vrindavan. at the Radharani temple. And he had like one dhoti, one piece of cloth. It was very, very poor. Wash it at night with drying heat, we clean in the morning. And all this time for writing his Back to God magazine and his commentary on Bhagavatam that he had started. And then when the magazine was finished, he would catch the train, collect money, beg, catch a train to go to Calcutta, Delhi, to the publisher, and he would somehow or other convince the publisher to publish the magazine, although he had no money. He had no money, and the man knew he had no money, and he probably knew he would never get paid, but he couldn't resist. And Prabhupada would go around selling the magazine at tea shops, where all the men were gathered and talking the politics of the new nation. This is like now the Gandhi's revolution has been complete, and there's a new nation, how it would be formed, and who would, was a big issue. So he would be selling, and then he would put up his magazine there at the tea shops, and he would find some Christian tracts, like from Jehovah's Witnesses or something. And that's when he found out about the West Coast. And all those tracts would have this, and the last paragraph was all about Tripurari Jesus. So Prabhupada would read them, and get some idea what people were thinking, they thought this is. So he was reading the Christian tracts, and he had a desire to go to the West. He was not like other boys or men who wanted to go to the West. This was his rag bhakti, his rag for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Many boys wanted to go. Well, he wasn't a boy; he was a man at this time. But wanted to go to the West for material reasons. So Prabhupada has had as ardent or more of a desire to go to the West than them, and if you caught him at the wrong moment, you think, well, this guy just wants to go to the West. Finding a way to get a visa, to get some money to go, and so forth, selling his magazine, like his heart was filling with a desire to fulfill what he understood were the instructions of his Guru Maharaj. You get money, print books, preach in English. And by this time, of course, England now had been replaced as the world leader with the United States. And Prabhupada Srila Maharaj told us that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said at one point that he wanted to have 10 years that he could live in the United States and preach. So he foresaw, this was before World War II, and he foresaw that the United States would become the dominant country in the world. Of course, he passed away before that happened, but Srila Maharaj said, and he got 10 years plus 2 through his disciple, as he went on to Swami Prabhupada. Because 12 years he traveled in the Western world. And largely his base and the rest was in the United States. And so, we're coming to that. He had a dream living in Vrindavan that if you really want to preach, you should be a sannyasi, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was, like I said, and this creates a teaching moment. Now, Prabhupada was living as a beggar, a sadhu beggar, right? As a vanaprastha, so to speak. And still, he was frightened by the idea of sannyas. So we have to understand what sannyas really means. It's not a promotion, on a scale, on a ladder within the organization, to have a better position, get, sweets or whatever, Prabhupada understood what it meant. So he thought deeply about it, but he felt that his Guru Maharaj, I think a common man, I think, said the same thing. He thought, Prabhupada speaking to me through him. So he first went to Srila Maharaj. Srila Maharaj told me this person. He said, he came to my mom. He asked for sannyasa, and I was a little bit like, you just kind of came out of the family life here. Maybe it's a little premature. And by the way, as you know, I've been living, I just got my mom here, and I was recently, probably previously, I was living in your apartment in Chitakanta Banerjee Lane next door to you. I know your wife very well, and kids. If I give you something else, they're going to come to my house here, my mom here, and cause trouble, because their provider is going away. So he told me, so I hesitated. And I told him, hold on, let's see, He said, but he went to Keshav Maharaj. And then he was named, but he was on the Swami Prabhupada. The line was performed.
the ritual, and Keshav Maharaj gave mantra. Keshav Maharaj had received sannyas from Srila Maharaj. So that's sannyas religion. Now Prabhupada was, in his own estimation, ready for the world preaching, and found a way through the Bhagavad Sampradaya. A lady, prominent, wealthy lady who owned what would you call it? Shipping business. And he asked her for passage on one of her cargo ships to the United States, and she said, Swami, you're old, you should learn from them. You're tired. This is not a time to go to the United States. And so he sat down on her property and had a job and wouldn't leave. So he came out of the morning. Is he still there? Yes, he's still there. Is he still there? 3 days, he's still there. And so then she had that, yes, and against her better judgment, give him the ticket. So now we segue through, this is the audio, a little bit, and segue now into the Antibody, which is a little, the monthly, which is a little more well known. That we sing the song. Please. We spent a good amount of time on the audio. It's getting a little long, but we ended what we did here, and it's a very compelling section of Prabhupada's life, and one that he's, of course, most famous for, crossing the ocean in the Davaduta, and that was not an easy task in and of itself. And on that boat, he composed this song expressing his own private feelings for Krishna. The song is entitled Prayer to Lord Krishna. And he addresses him in the refrain, Krishna tava punya pave bhai. E punya koribe jabe harani kushi khode. Adi bole kama thai. And here he refers to Krishna as buddy, my dear buddy, my friend, hey brother, and speaks to him about something that has the really power to get Krishna's attention. He says that, listen, pal, he says, let me tell you something. The fact of the matter is that if Radharani is pleased with you, then your life is going to be successful. He says, Dhruva, Dhruva is a pole star, which is thought to be stationary, and others, whatever, right, planets or stars are orbiting around it. So he's saying, this is a way of saying, this is like, as sure as the pole star, it doesn't move. This is a fact. It will never change. Your success in life, and for you to be dharmic, Krishna, it requires that you please Radharani. So this is the kind of a conversation that someone like Subala would have with Krishna. It's obviously how a friend would talk to Krishna, but a friend who's privy to his romantic life and assisting him in that, which is characteristic of the Narmasakas, the most intimate friends of Krishna. So Prabhupada speaking in this mood, and of course, this was the also the insight of Srila Maharaj with regard to this, who kept this poem and had it. Somehow he got it, he kept it, and we got it from Chutananda Maharaj, who stayed at his mouth for some time. And you could see he studied it, because when we sat on his veranda, and he didn't pull the poem up, but he pulled it out of his head and decided that it gave some very rustic insights into what Prabhupada was saying here. And I'm elaborating and extending upon those here, as I've explained in a brief refrain. But he does this, as I say, to get Krishna's attention, because he has a request of Krishna that is in his own estimation, and I believe he's right, big one. He had been given a task in his own mind. He used to tell us that my Guru Maharaj ordered me to go west, ordered me to print books. It was just like a suggestion he wrote in the letter. Yeah, if you get money, you can print books. I think it would be good if he spoke in English, you know, good for you. Probably took it as an order. He took like one or two sentences from his Guru Maharaj in his life. That was the anchor for his whole life, and all perfection rose out of that. And that's the power of the Guru's words, if you just pay attention. So he says that, he goes on, speaks to Krishna, he says, Siddhanta Saraswati Saji Sutta Priya Ati, Bhakti Siddhanta, he's very dear to Lord Gauranga. He's Priya Ati Priya, very, very dear to the son of Sachi. This is a very, of course, affectionate reference. Sachinanda, Sachisutta. These names of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are really intimate names and very to the group, the eternal associates of Mahaprabhu, they were very, very, very special, because after all, we want Nimai Pandit in Navadvip. We don't really want to see him as a sannyasi. So even as a sannyasi, they're calling him Satyananda, Sachisutta. It's an unbecoming in one sense, but it's the bhav, right? We want Satyananda and Sachisutta, not Sri Krishna Chaitanya, but we want Sri Krishna Chaitanya because through him, through his sannyas, we can get entrance into Nadia. So here he's referring to my Guru Maharaj. Siddhanta Saraswati was very dear to Sachisutta. Krishna Seva, Jai, Dulanai, his service is unparalleled. Se Mahanta Guru Jagate Madhe Guru, Krishna Bhakti Ye Tai Tai. He opened 64 Gaudiya monasteries in India. That is just an amazing feat, and it was in a short period of time, relatively speaking, right? He started his mission, Dr. Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, around 1910, 1911, 12, and at that time, of course, Kashodas Babaji Maharaj, his Diksha Guru, and Dr. Vinod Thakur, his father, Guru, also were present. And take note that he began initiating in their presence with their blessing. There are some detractors from the mission of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur that came out of the woodwork after his departure, because they had no place to hide in his presence. Such was his campaign, so wide and so far, and the essence of it was that he was against hypocrisy in the name of bhakti. He set a very extreme standard. That's why he took sannyas, because it has that, aura, if you will, and he lived up to it in frightening ways, examples of detachment and renunciation and so forth. Similar to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, frightened the other sannyasis. And he opened 64 knots. I mean, that's no small thing. And he disturbed a lot of people.
Disturbed a lot of people, unsettled them, from their complacent and even critical postures within such a significant, important, and such a wealth of the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. To be complacent about that and have been given the entrance into that and so forth. You could talk, let's speak of being hypocritical in the name of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he created some enemies. There was an attempted assassination of him and so on and so forth, and some of the stories. But when the Thakur passed away, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the train took him to his Sadhakadaya, Sadhakadaya to Manipur. All along, the word passed, rippled throughout the countryside. Saraswati Thakur was passed away. Saraswati Thakur, all village people, women and children came. They knew. Lined up at the train, in the train stop, the trains, they all came to the basis to the train. The train that was carrying his body. They just, it couldn't be denied who he was and what he did. Like I say, afterwards, well, in the absence of a great person, then in the absence of the sun, some bats and things come out, some creatures of the night, that have no light to offer themselves. Unfortunately, a couple of senior followers of Bhaktisiddhanta were influenced by them. They wrote some books criticizing Bhaktisiddhanta and lost sight of the nose on their face. Our critics sometimes, even of spotless people. But this is a classic example. But the train goes on, I guess. That's the way to look at that. So we went on in a big way, I should say, in the form of Prabhupada's effort to fulfill the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, where to take it to the West, speak, in English-speaking countries, to go to the United States, is asking Krishna, says, listen, Krishna, Cal, here's the situation I need. My guru is Bhaktisiddhanta, he's doing this, he's the Mahanta Guru, he's the Jagat Guru, and he's asked something of me. Ta icha balavan paschat eke antam hoi jagat gaurangan nam. Viti nagarari asamudanaran sakale loi Krishna nam. By his strong desire, the holy name of Gauranga, it should spread throughout all the countries of the Western world, the cities, the towns, the villages on the earth, and all the oceans, rivers, streams, everyone will chant the holy name. That's his desire, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So, as the vast mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu conquers all directions of flood, of transcendental ecstasy, will cover the land, when will all the sinful, miserable living entities become happy? Then the Vaishnava's desires will be fulfilled. Although my Guru Maharaj, here it is, ordered me to accomplish this mission, I'm not worthy or fit to do it. I'm a fallen and insignificant person. Therefore, Lord, now I'm begging your mercy that I may become worthy, for you are the wisest and the most experienced of all. If you bestow your power by serving the spiritual master, one attains the absolute truth. One's life becomes successful. And if that service is obtained, then one becomes happy and gets your association in due course. Here's the end. There's a break now in this poem. Here Prabhupada's making his request to Krishna. He got Krishna's attention, right? And he says, "This is how I got your attention. Now I've got your attention. Let me glorify one of your devotees, my guru. I've got your attention, Krishna. What do I want to do with that? I want to bring your attention to my guru. That's what I want to do. This is how to please Krishna. He has shown so beautifully how to please Krishna. I want to bring you to attention my guru and glorify him. And I stand right in front of you, Krishna, and say, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, Ki Jai.
Jai.
and I'm not shy to say that, right in front of you. And I know that will please you more than anything else that I could say. This is how you have come to me in this form, in greater measure than in any other way in which you've come to me and affected my life. And all my attention is going there in Guru Seva. Now I've got your attention right there out of the Braj Lila, right? Talking to you about Radharani. So hold on. Now, here's one of Radharani's servants, because internally, he's a Manjari. He thought of him, conceived of himself, experienced himself as Nayanamani Manjari. So it's a handmaiden of Radha, only doing the bidding of Radha. So he said, my Gurudev is a follower, is one of Radharani's handmaids. This is what he's saying here. And he is great also in terms of his sadhaka deha, that he's serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Satyasuta's mission. He's he's extremely dear to, and he has a desire that this will spread around the world, and he's asked me to be his instrument, and so is my request. Give me the power, because I cannot possibly do this on my own. I mean, this is entirely how Prabhupada thought of himself. And when it was happening, he never identified with it. It's my doing. God, Krishna is the ability of man, as he says about him. So Prabhupada asked for the power, the Shakti. Krishna Shakti, Vinay Nahi, Tar Pravartana, says in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Without Krishna Shakti, no one can do effectively Nam-Sankirtan. Did Prabhupada effectively do Nam-Sankirtan?
Yeah.
They must have had Krishna Shakti.
Yeah.
That means Krishna, what is it? Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu say? That this bhava is the ray of the sun. Surashatma Visheshatma Prema Suryamsu Samneva. Prema Suryamsu, Amsu of the Surya, of the sun, a ray of the sun of Prem, that is bhava. And it manifests within the heart, from within the heart of the jiva, through sadhusanga and subsequent sadhana, spiritual practice, and so forth. And with that manifestation of bhava, a particular combination of this knowing and ecstasy potencies of the Surup Shakti. It's Sambit and Ladini, knowing I'm a friend, and the corresponding types of ecstasies, knowing I'm a maidservant, and the corresponding type of ecstasy. This is Bhakti proper. And such a person has power now, right? Prabhupada had that power. No, I mean, it's just like no one could possibly think that Prabhupada did not love Krishna. He has critics, but they should just be this simple way. Do you think he didn't love Krishna? Do you love him more, do you think? Let's look at how he expressed that love. What was his sharanagati? You can't see inside. You could wonder, but you can see inside. If you look at the outside, then you can understand the inside, that you can put two and two together. If he's a sharanagata in no uncertain terms, in such an extreme way, as we see, as he's praying here in Sharanagati and Guru Nishta, expressing his Guru Nishta before Krishna, asking for the power. And of course, he comes to America. As I said the other day, he's doing Madhukari in the Bowery, where there's no chapatis being cooked, there's no line of sadhus. You get over here, there's chapatis over here. There's a system in India where sadhus can get a meal, where they can go door to door. Oh, it's a sadhu, give them some rice. Well, try that. And in the Bowery, Prabhupada was homeless there in winter in New York. Right? And what carried him? This order of his spiritual master and his petition for Krishna for the power to carry out that order and the holy name of Krishna. His faith in Harinam was just unflinching. Prabhupada said, in the beginning, I gave out the Harinam, just experiment to see what would happen with people. Who are these people that are coming to me? Gave her Harinam, see what would happen. And that's how he spread his movement, because he would give Harinam, and they would chant, and they would come back and say, Prabhupada, we should have a temple in San Francisco. Prabhupada said, Krishna wants a temple in San Francisco. That's how he ran his movement. So he sent them, go to San Francisco, go to London, go to Montreal, from New York. This is how it started happening. He believed that he had given them Nam, they were practicing, and so Krishna was speaking back to him, through them. He was getting information from them, how people think here, how to do things here, and so on and so forth. At one point, he was writing about the Rhyme or asking for Mridanga and other things, and he said, this is like a different place. There's so many lights at night. It's like the day. Vrindavan, there wasn't a car. There was, 90% of people didn't have electricity. Even when I first went there, speaking when, decades earlier when Prabhupada was there. And he said, and everybody has a car, and nobody has a driver. Because in India, if you had a car, you were rich, you had a driver. Everybody has a car, and nobody has a. What planet am I on? How do you talk their language? And we, 20, 25-year-olds, some of them were a little older, I was like 22, something like that when I joined. I didn't know. I've been there. Some of you have been there. At 22, what do you know then compared to now? What advice could we give Prabhupada on how the world worked and everything? We were pretty crazy, but we were sincere. Prabhupada trusted us, and he trusted the power of the holy name. And it spoke to him, and he spread his mission like this. And his rules, his main rules for what was a society was forming around the church, to use Bhaktivinoda Thakur's term, the Church of the Holy Name. When Prabhupada filed the papers for the incorporation of ISKCON, my governor, Tripurari Maharaj, who was with him at that time, said that Prabhupada filed it, signed it, incorporated ISKCON. And he said, now we've incorporated society for spreading Krishna consciousness. But if it gets in the way, we will leave it. Wow. So it has a purpose, right? I'm not saying anyone should leave ISKCON. I did under certain circumstances, but it was the Church of the Holy Name. This is what's Bhakti notes in PDF, right? And his principal rules were, the society should be governed by love and trust. Those were the main rules. Let it be governed by love and trust. And let the governors of it, the administrators, do themselves out of a job. That is the perfection of management. Manage yourself out of a job by inspiring people to do things so they don't have to be told. I was blessed to be a little bit like that. So when the GBC called me in 1975 and questioned me because I was traveling around and distributing Prabhupada's books. I had a small group of brahmacharis with me. We sent them all the money to Prabhupada's book fund. It was and it was a long story, but the GBC called me and said, who was your GBC? And I said, I don't know. I had one in LA before I left. I went to Australia and Blooped left. You tell me, I said. So I was innocent, but I wasn't naive. So I thought, well, these guys want to control me. I thought, okay, I'm not against that, but So they went to Prabhupada. They would meet for 3 days. That's what they were allowed to meet for 3 days. And then they'd come to Prabhupada and say, we passed this resolution and this one. And Prabhupada would say, yay, nay, adjust that. Let's get on with the festival. So they said, and Tripurari Das and Prabhupada, 3 of them came and told me, they said, oh, I know. Prabhupada sat up and his eyes got wide and what has he done? And they said, well, Prabhupada, he doesn't have a GBC. And Prabhupada said, he does not need a GBC. He said, he is doing without the need. That's how you should manage it. Others will do like this spontaneously serve. You don't have to be told. So that's what they should work for, and all such managers and institutions should work along those lines. But this way he spread his movement with an implicit trust in the power, in the virtue, in the efficacy of Harinam, and he was very, very powerful. I mean, when he returned to India for the first time, came to Pujapad Sri Maharaj's mosque to teach the disciples how to do the Guru Puja, because they came there on the day of Prabhupada, Pujapad Sri Maharaj's appearance day. So there was a celebration. So Prabhupada wanted to show them how they would perform the Vyasa Puja ceremony for him. So they came to Sri Maharaj's mosque. And Sri Maharaj said, that they were very intimate. So the intimacy was still there, but something about him. Now he was charged. So Sri Maharaj is taking this in. He was taking this in. And he gets the poem later on, and we just sang half of. He put it together. And that's why he said, when we're getting ahead with it, when Prabhupada disappeared, and he told us prior to that, prior to the Sri Maharaj, get advice from him, get counsel from him. Sri Maharaj offered a eulogy glorifying Prabhupada when he found out that he disappeared. And it's at that time he said, I consider him a Shaktivesh. That was very powerful. Later on, the Maharaj, his successor, asked him, what did you mean, Maharaj, when he said that Swami Maharaj was Shaktivesh? He said, what kind of, because there are different types of Vesh, empowerment it means. And he said, Nityananda Vesh. And then we realized, he's been thinking about this for a long time. And he came out with all, he did this, he was born in the Day family, coming from the Saptagram village. Nityananda gave us special grace there, And he established Gornatai deities everywhere, which Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur didn't do. And in his home place, because Prabhupada said, I worship in Navadvip, live in Vrindavan. Serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Gaur, in Dasya Bhakti, and get a Swarup in Madhurya or Sakya Bhakti in Vrindavan. That's how it works. That's the system. And if you come to Braj, like I said the other day, the gates there, Peter and Paul, the Rupa Sanatana gates there, and they say, where are you coming from? We can open the door and let them in. They're coming through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this guy, and Nityananda Prabhu, especially, let them in. Right? So, what is it? So anyway, this was Prabhupada's campaign, far and wide, right? And he came to the mosque and he returned to India the first time. Sridhar Maharaj said, there's something about him, right? And so he put this all together. And it was later, after Prabhupada disappeared, we were sitting around, he came out with all this support for his perspective, drawing on the letter and Nityananda Vesh. So this is Prabhupada's Madhya Lila, if you will. And here in the prayers we see his Sharanagati. Sharanagati has to be there to be Bhava. Sharanagati is relative to Sadhana Bhakti. And it's a petition for growing the faith and surrendering, right? That's what Sharanagati means, right? It's the outer expression of Shraddha, faith. Bhava Bhakti, by contrast, is characterized by longing to obtain that ideal. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say, first deserve, then desire. What he meant by that was get the Sharanagati in place, then long for Vrindavan. Because if you're longing for, Manjari Bhav, but you're not paying attention to Sharanagati, you got your eyes on room 108 on the map, but you don't know where the next step is that you're supposed to go, because the map says room 108 is here and you are here. You got to know both things to get to room 108. So a lot of people lose sight of where they are and they just thought their way into Manjari Bhav or Sakya Bhav, and it's just not that easy. You can't go there with your shoes on. You can't. You have to. It's not what you know, what you do. It's who you know. It's who you know. Of course, he or she will tell you what to do and expect that of you, but who you know. So he knew Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He presented this. This is my guru. Now he concludes this section here. He's talking to Krishna in his poem, and he concludes this section by segueing out of the Bengali language that it's written in by way of citing a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. It will conclude this section here. He says, Evam Janma Nipatitam. Evam Janma Nipatitam. Not getting the direct critics here. Prabhavi Kupe. Anyway, he says, people in general, Evam Janma, they are in the Kupe, in the well, really saying in the snake hole of material existence, the Bhagavata, and this is Prahlad speaking. They're stuck there. That's where they are. And I'm in the same situation. And that's my association. Prahlad is saying. And however, he says, my guru came to me. Narada Muni came to me, he said. Now, Nrsimha Maharaj is asking Prahlad to take a benediction. And what Prahlad is saying here is that what I want from, who wouldn't want Nrsimhadev to come before and say, ask whatever you want. Here I am. I give the blessing. Whatever you want, ask it. So what is Prahlad asking for? He says, I want to have service to my guru. That's what I want. I'm not going there without you, without my guru. Srila Maharaj used to say, if in your bhajan, Krishna appears and gives you darshan, and asks you to do something or gives you some message, tell him, hold on, I'm going to talk to my guru. Then you talk to your guru and say, is that really him? Guru says, yes. Then you go back. Then I will do what he said. This is how we understand Krishna. No understanding Krishna without guru. Not possible. This is the Kripa Avatar, the Kripa Shakti of Bhagavan. I was standing next, I had my place, there's a picture of me there on the wall. I had my place in, like you get your footprints in Hollywood, you know, I had my place in the New Dwarka Temple in Los Angeles, next to Prabhupada, right here on this Vyasa. And I was very fortunate to be there every morning that he was there. Right? I used to stand up so I wouldn't fall asleep because we didn't sleep much in those days. And when I sang, when Prabhupada would sing Radha Madhava, and I would think, he loves this. This means so much to me. I hardly know what this means. It doesn't mean the same thing to me, but it means to him. But so I wanted to sing these names in his ear to please him, because I know what it means to him. I remember this, that's that picture there. I was thinking like that on that day. It's very memorable to me. And Prabhupada, of course, turned to me and looked at me, understanding my heart. And then, of course, the Jayarada would stop and probably give the Bhagavatam class. Typically, after the Bhagavatam class, there would be a little kirtan. Prabhupada would get up, they would listen to these and exit the temple. And so who would lead the kirtan? There were a couple of sannyasis there, and they were kind of like, I don't really know, I want to lead. And I was just a brahmachari. Actually, I think I was a householder at that time. And Prabhupada stopped him. I think it was Sudama Maharaj and Blue people. I don't really know. They said, let this boy sing. Never remember it. So Prabhupada, he could feel your heart. So then I led the kirtan. And I hadn't led a kirtan before. So and the next morning, same thing happened. Prabhupada turned, let this boy sing again. So I had a lot of service to Prabhupada that was not in his presence, but he was present. His presence extended far beyond his physical presence. And about his physical characteristics, I mentioned about speaking to him about him. His eyes were the most prominent feature. He had a glance of Baladev Yusa speaks about a glance of love that could benedict you, just by glancing that could see if I could look right in the Prabhupada's eyes, but I could understand, if you weren't giving your all in all, it would be harder. You have to blink, right? But by His grace, I'm very extreme. What I get into real extreme. So the days of, I'm just going to go personal about here, but the days of Prabhupada, early days in Los Angeles, we would spend like 3 months there in the spring, 2-3 months in the winter, and that was life for me. When he would come out of his door to go on the car, to go to the park for a walk, I'd be opening the door, I'd be opening the car door and closing it, and then I'd be there to open it when he came back until he said, "Why don't you come?" And I would get in too. Get to go. And then when he'd go in his door in his room, which then he'd walk through to open the door to the temple, I would run around the other side, and then I'd be at the other door where he'd come in the temple. I mean, you know, pay close attention to something like that. And that's what Prabhupada felt about Dr. Siddhanta Sarojini Thakur. Here he's talking to Krishna, and he puts this verse of the Bhagavatam where Narada is saying, "I'm not going there. You're inviting me into Vaikuntha. I'm not going without Narada Muni. He's my guru." And this is very Gaudiya, of course. Prabhupada once, later, not about 1977, was, and we're heading out to this Antya-lila, if you will. He bathed in the Ganga at Mayapur, and my Godbrother Bhavananda Maharaj extended his hand to help him out. Right? So Prabhupada stepped out onto the bank. When he got onto the bank, he went, threw down the hand of Bhavananda. And Bhavananda said, "What did I do wrong?" And Prabhupada said, "That is my laws." They give up their guru. You helped him out. The guru takes you out, right? Then you don't need the guru because you are God. This was his way. He was illustrating the difference between Vaishnavism, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and Mayavada. The guru is something that's dispensable, but not in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. The guru is there in eternity, right? He has his own form there, right? His own group for us to enter into. Very beautiful. There's nowhere in any school of Vedanta or any school of Vaishnava Vedanta where the guru is more prominent than in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. How she plays a role in the Nitya Leela. Their Gurudev will be there. The Parsha that you follow, Tubal, Alita Saki, days. Gurudev is also there. And some about self-induction and so forth. And these are limitations on uppercut. We can find it in Govinda Vilamrita, Tulsi Manjari's praying, Kasturi Manjari, Krishna's coverage is writing. Why is he writing about Tulsi Manjari? We found him right there. So Prabhupada, this is a very powerful verse from Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada is concluding the Sharanagati section with Guru Seva, Guru Nishtha. This is not something to democratize, which is an unfortunate development I see in the Gaudiya community to some extent. There's no like it's an autocracy. It's a benevolent dictatorship is what it is. And we need to understand that because that's where we're going. That's what goes on there. It's Krishna, and there's taxation without representation, and it's good because he's benevolent. How benevolent he is. We were reading this morning how in the name he takes over your life. Oh, you weren't here. Oh, beautiful song about the note. Srila much was explaining it. Just you have no life of your own, but the life you have in his embrace, if you will, exceeds any kind of freedom you could have. Even the freedom of moksha in Brahman, even in Vaikuntha, that kind of freedom. It's a kind of moksha. Therefore, the Gaudiyas, we don't like that word moksha. Yeah, there's a kind of praying in Vaikuntha also, but not the full face of praying. Therefore, our prayer is praying, not mukti. Every other Vaishnava Sampradaya is mukti. Yes, it's a little bit just using words, but and Gurudev is there. So this is the way, right? There's no place in which Krishna is more prominent, has come to us more prominently than through the Guru. All attention should be given there. And he or she, what does Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say? Asli Shabha Pavartam Vinashtamam Adarshanam Marmatam Kurudu Bhava Pribhaktivam Toba Prananathas Susayavanatha. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speaking. Krishna says, Radharani spoke this verse. It's the end of Shikshastika. Mahaprabhu is successful. He has entered into Radha Bhav. It's the end of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is so dramatic. Radharani has spoken this verse. What did she say? Krishna is my Lord, my lover, no matter what he does. If he neglects me, if he tramples on me, or he embraces me, he can do whatever the heck he wants. That's who he is. He is Swarat, fully independent. He can do whatever he wants, and it's right. And it's right for me. I just need the right angle of vision. And Gurudev comes to represent that. We get to practice that. Don't go against Gurudev. That is not recommended at all. That is the best way to end your spiritual life. Some people had doubts about Bhaktisiddhanta. Some of his own few disciples wrote some books against it. They could not see the nose on their face, 64 months, and extended around the world. You don't think our Parivar has power? Some night crawlers come out and criticize. We don't have Siddha Pranali. No, we've got Harinam. Is that not enough? Holy names can reveal himself and given to us by our Guru, the blessing to chant. And we chant, and we have power to make others chant. Prabhupada had that kind of power. It's said that a Vaishnava is one who, upon seeing him, one chants the holy name. Well, people chanted the holy name hearing about Prabhupada. There were temples like Vancouver, Canada, is one always comes to mind. They had 300 devotees there. Prabhupada never went there. They're up at 4 a.m. chanting 6 artiks a day, going out all day on Buddhist. He never even went there. What kind of Shakti? What kind of a Vesh? Nityananda Vesh. Not in any small way. And this is how he got it. This is the kind of thinking he had. This is the kind of Sharanagati that he did. So emptied himself out completely. I mean, Nityananda's a big guy. You got to have a big space for him. He emptied his heart out completely to make room. And I know even some people from outside of Bhaktivinoda Parivar, Babaji's in Vrindavan said that Nityananda Prabhu came and empowered that Bhaktivedanta who's taking this around the world. He empowered him this way. So this was Prabhupada's, as I say, his kind of Madhya Leela. And here, from there, we go now to the last part of the song, and the Antya Leela of Prabhupada, and it's very, very charming and compelling. Please, take us there.
So this is the last part of Prabhupada's poem, and with, as I say, the Sharanat, with the last part of Prabhupada's poem, with the Sharanagati, if you will, in place, is long and makes sense. It's meaningful. It's compelling. So if we want to long for that in such a way that Krishna's going to pay attention to it, well, take the necessary steps. You need for. If you want to grow a mango, you got to dig a hole and go down before it go up, right? You got to go down and put the seed in, cover it up, and I thought I was going to get a mango here. You know, you want to build a building, well,
dig a hole. You want to build a 10-story building, first thing you do is build a hole, dig a hole. People go, what the heck you doing? I wanted the building to go up, not down. You gotta go down to go up. You gotta build a foundation. That means Sharanagati. This should be the focus of sadhana. This is the outer expression of faith, is what faith is. Faith is Sharanagati. You need to grow that. And it should, for it to be successful, everything must be Guru-centered. And there, Guru is pleased, Krishna is pleased. It's black and white. It's just black and white. There's no gray. There's no gray. Pujapati Maharaj used to say, if you offer the Guru a flower, please, here's a flower, that's bhakti. Right? If Gurudev says, no, I don't want that. No, and then you say, take it. Second time, it's not bhakti. This is practice. This is practice. That's what sadhana means, is practice. Right? So, and he's an autocrat. We talked about it. So, on his terms, right? His terms, they're good actually. And they seem a little tough only because we're going 100 miles an hour in the wrong friggin' direction for a long time. We misconstrued. I would think our head can lead us, we got one. Otherwise, it's our sensitive awareness, and we think our head can lead us. I can figure this out. I'm smarter than the Guru even. What about that? That's not a good idea. That's not a good idea. You cannot get there with the head. It is, and the more you try to go there with the head, the more you will recover from that place. Faith, as Pujapati Maharaj used to like to say, that is the proper vehicle for going there. Not intellect, not your thoughts, but faith. And where do we pose the faith? Well, there's an agency for that, right? Don't argue with that. So we see, now Prabhupada set such a nice example. Now, so therefore his longing, which comes in these next couple prayers here of his poem, are very appropriate. This is now Bhava Marg. He's showing the way of sadhana bhakti. Now he's not showing it, but he's just expressing it. We're bringing it out and showing it. What is Bhava? Tumara, tumi more chitta sati buddhya mati. Oh Krishna, you are my eternal companion. Getting you, I've suffered kicks of my birth after birth. If today by the chance to meet you first, I will surely be able to rejoin you. Then the most, it's the central part of the whole thing in terms of his aspiration, the whole prayer comes here. So Maranane Baya, Varshesh Kukai, Gojarani Buddhim Por, Kotamani Chutajivani Kai, Shading Karavan, the very sound of it. Kotavani Chutajivani Kai, Lutta Puti, somersaulting, playing, it's very beautiful language, word usage in Bengali. How does this Sankhya Leela then, as we're talking, describing it in Prabhupada's life, where does it begin? We talked about his sannyasis coming across the ocean, he was opening many temples, preaching and so forth. Well, the crown jewel of all of his works, if you will, other than the publishing of his books, which was obviously central to his mission, was, as he said, worship in Navadvip, worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, do the bidding of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, do Nam Sankirtan, circulate his message with the Brihat Mridanga, the big drum in the form of the books, circulate, perspire doing this, work hard doing this, do seva. This is non-seva, not just moving the fingers and heads going here or there. You can't sit down and control your mind. Get up, get busy, do something for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They've got a mission. What's going to happen? You got to be the arms, the legs, make it happen. Perspire, then maybe some tears will come. First perspire, then tears will come. So, Prabhupada's mission, wide, far, okay, and he did Nam Sankirtan, trotted everywhere. He printed the books, did the Brihat Mridanga, and the crown jewel, in a sense, of his work was to be able to live, live in Vrindavan, right? To get entrance into Vrindavan, and he wanted entrance into Vrindavan for all of his devotees also. That's the Krishna Balaram temple. He did the Mayapur one, he did Bombay, and he wanted the Krishna Balaram temple, and to be accepted there, and we'll have all of his disciples accepted there. We were questionable in people's minds, that people were afraid to step on our shadows, and so forth. He wanted us accepted. And so he got the land donated, and he worked hard, he struggled to build the Krishna Balaram temple. And I was blessed to have a very big role in that. Small, but I had a big role. On the wall in that building, it's printed. This was built by BBT TSKP. That means the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust Traveling Sankirtan Party. That was my party. And Guru Kripa Swami and Srila Swami, two other Swamis. And those two Swamis, they were quite a couple of characters. I loved them very much, but they were hard to be with at times. And 1974, the year before Prabhupada gave me sannyas, I came to Mayapur. And at that time, it wasn't very well developed. And we were staying in Prabhupada's straw hut where he used to stay. And they wanted me, they wanted to travel in the United States and raise money for Prabhupada. And they had done some of that, but they were in conflict with the temples. As the temples would send out their devotees to raise funds and sell books to support the temple. And these guys would come in and go to the places where they were going and agitate the authorities. And then the guy at the Kmart wouldn't let you come back and stand in the parking lot next time, something like that. Anyway, so they approached me and they said, "Hey, Tripurari, here's, all the big collectors, most of the time, so we want their names, So I said to them, another sannyasi was there, and he'd come from Japan. I was talking to him, and he said, in Japan, they got a little more culture there. You got the Buddhists, so you can go out and your devotee, go like this, and put out a basket and then this money. So, okay. So I thought about it, and I told her, Kripa Swami and Srila, I said, you guys want to do? Go to Japan. And they bid on it. They gave them the bait and they bid. And I gave them a couple of names of people that aren't the best book distributors, and kind of tricked them a little bit. And, so they went to Japan. They caused a big ruckus there, but they raised lots of money. And they sent it directly to Prabhupada. So that fund and the funds that my party collected were sent to Prabhupada to build the Krishna Balaram temple. So it's very much on my mind. The Prabhupada wants the Krishna Balaram temple, and we're working for it. And so, in 1975, it opened, and this was now Prabhupada had a formal temple there, and Krishna Balaram in the center. The pose of Krishna Balaram, of course, that's all comes from Prabhupada's heart, and they were carved. There are no Krishna Balaram temples in Vrindavan. There's a Balaram temple here and there. This is it's not a bad thing, obviously, but now you go there, you find Krishna Balaram deities in the shops, and everywhere, and other parts of the world. It's all Prabhupada's doing. That came from his heart. That pose, you see Krishna and Balaram, and with Balaram holding on to Krishna's shoulder, that's from Prabhupada's heart. He told the carvers exactly how to make that on the central altar in the Krishna Balaram temple. And then Prabhupada organized all these Brahmins and respectable people to attend the festival, which is a 3-day festival to install the deity. And all this ritual was going on. Prabhupada would be called out every now and then. It's time for the acharya to come and put it close to you and say, "Oh, go back to your room." So he did all, his part, and it was a big, big affair. And in the midst of that, there were 7 Brahmin boys who were born in Braj from Brahmin families, and they were all going to take initiation during this festival with Prabhupada. And this is a huge thing because they were going to eat chapatis at the temple, white people. And so it was a big, big thing. We didn't know it, but if you were tuned in to what was going on in Braj, it was a big thing. These boys were coming forward with courage, inspired by Prabhupada, and their parents had given permission, and they were getting initiated. And so it was a major thing. Many respectable people came, and Prabhupada basically did such a good job of it, if you will, just in his inspired, side, that once the temple was opened, the deities were installed, and every night there were ministers coming from different provinces. People probably taken to the temple, walked up with different altars, given the darshan and so forth. Every night for about a week, it was just like packed, and very ecstatic extension of the whole installation. And of course, on the day that they were installed, Prabhupada offered the arti to Krishna and Balaram. You've ever seen the famous picture where he's turning around with the chamra? Well, I was right there on the front row, right there. And it was like, you were like packed in like this, and I wasn't missing that for anything. I had strived, worked hard, talked to people, blowing smoke in my face, asking for a donation, for a book to build the Krishna Balaram temple. And I thought, I'm going there, and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to get Bhakti Samskar for this. I'm not missing this. That's the whole story. Why I might have missed it, because they wanted me to not go there and stay out and collect more money. I'm not doing that. I'm going there. This is an opportunity for me to reap the fruits, right? So of all this effort. So there, I was right there, and to see Prabhupada off that Arctic, I broke out in tears. It just drenched my whole, upper body, weeping in ecstasy about Prabhupada's grace. It was just so profound. And then Vishaka, who was a god sister, she was a photographer. So I was in her way, and she was trying to get the picture. She said, Tripurari, and I was like, I'm not moving. I'm not moving. Sorry. What came to my mind, there was a famous story in Chaitanya Charitamrita where Shiva Thakur is in kirtan, circle kirtan with Mahaprabhu, and the king's assistant or somebody's tapping him on the shoulder. Let the king have it. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. He turned around and slapped him. So I'm not a savage, but I guess she thought that she said, it's for the preaching, and she thought that registered with me, but it actually didn't. But she thought I moved out of the way so she could take the picture, but I actually didn't voluntarily. I just happened to move, and she got the picture. I wasn't uncooperative, but I was, the otherworldly there, and I was really able to, by Prabhupada's grace, enter into what he was doing there. And of course, the Krishna Balaram, they extended their grace to me, blessing to me, and only a few days left after Prabhupada gave me sannyas, which was against the GBC resolution that they had just passed. No one could take sannyas without being recommended by the GBC. Waiting for a year, Prabhupada gave it to me, a few days later. So it was a very memorable time for me. But at any rate, this is like what I would call the beginning of the Antilope Troubles in 1975. In 2 years, really, in 2 years plus 2 months, Prabhupada would be leaving the world. So the temple was established, it was accepted in Vrindavan. What's left to do, right? In 1975, Prabhupada said, I think we should, we don't need to make any more devotees. We should just boil the milk. We've got enough devotees. He wrote a letter like that. And they should all be called Bhakti Vedantas. So that letter is also indicative of he's now moving in another direction. And of course, we didn't realize that as much as I do now, looking back, and then I'm speaking to you, and we thought it would just go on, forever as it was, but it was actually turning the corner now. This was a final accomplishment of Prabhupada at the Krishna Balaram temple there. He had done it. He came from Vrindavan. That's where he came from, right? to the west. He was living in Radha temple. And during that time, when the Krishna Balaram temple opened, the municipality in Vrindavan named the road from Delhi. There's a short turn here for Vrindavan. They named that road Bhaktivedanta Marg, Bhaktivedanta Street. They put a sign out there. They're coming from Delhi. They said Bhaktivedanta Marg here, arrow, turn. That is the road to Vrindavan, and it's so true. What the Goswamis did to excavate the places of pilgrimage of Leela Stalis, in Vrindavan, Tirobhava, and the kings, seeing that, would come and give money and build a temple there, or a monument and so forth. Taken by the spirituality of the Goswamis, they excavated the Vrindavan. When we were talking about it, go downhill, a lot of Tripurari doing the same thing. So Prabhupada did that in another way in modern times. He gave Vrindavan the world. And the street has stopped tomorrow. And we used to go, of course, in those days, there were no cars in Vrindavan, and you have a car to get there, and then we drop you off, and we never see it again. They weren't running through the street. There was nothing like that. It was just all bicycle rickshaws, and there were no speakers, too, big speakers, Shiva and Mahar, any of that stuff, secular music playing. It was very, very, very nice place, very beautiful, very rural. And there was one main bazaar. Roy Bazaar means it's a block where you could buy wool. Well, it was the closest bazaar, so we went there, and there were a mukut shop where you could buy things for the deities. So we knew them as local people. We knew all the shopkeepers. They knew the leaders of ISKCON by the first name and so forth. We accepted there. We were part of the family. We made Lloyd Bazaar rich. The temple president from Chicago, and from New York, and from London, and Los Angeles came. They'd compete. Who would spend more money on the deity? $10,000 for the deity, for helmets and outfits and the whole thing. They loved it, and of course, they loved us, and they loved Prabhupada. They loved him, for the wrong reasons and for the right reasons too. They loved him. We were accepted in Vrindavan. This was the opening of the temple. It's like I brought my disciples to Vrindavan. They're accepted here. How much that meant to him, right? So that was a turning point. And then, of course, it went on for a couple of years, and Krishna Balaram the temple was thriving. In those days, it was just us, there, and Prabhupada. Now there's all kinds of visitors. It's almost like thousands of pilgrims come there. So in those days, it was just us and Prabhupada. It was very, very quaint and very, very powerful, but very beautiful. But anyway, when come 1977, then in the spring of 77, when we were in Mayapur for the festival, well, Prabhupada was ill, and he couldn't come down and give class. And then we would stay 2 weeks in Mayapur, typically, and we would go to Vrindavan. Prabhupada told me in 1974, you go out all year, preach, then come and spend 1 month in Mayapur, Vrindavan. So that's what I would do. And, others would come and so forth. It was always a nice festival. So when it came time to go to Vrindavan, then Prabhupada wasn't going to go because of his health. So I went to see Prabhupada. He was out on his veranda, and he said, I said, Prabhupada, I'm not going to go to Vrindavan. He said, why not? I said, because you are Vrindavan and you're not going there. And Prabhupada was pleased by that. But he said, but no, you should go. You're a preacher. I've given you the name Tripurari, and Tripurari is Shiva empowered by Krishna to defeat the demons. So you should go there and preach. And he said, just like Bhagavad Gita, and whoever the Bhagavad Gita is, Krishna is, so you're telling the Bhagavad Gita. I never feel the absence of my Guru Maharaj ever for a moment. He said things like this to me. He preached to me, talked to me. I was very kind to me. That I was there just by myself, and then Ramaswar, my friend, who was in charge of PBT, he happened to arrive at that time, and he came up there, and there was come up a few other devotees with him. He brought a little publication, that they had done, said how many books had been printed in so many languages, and 64 million books had been printed at that time. So he gave that to Prabhupada, and he said, Prabhupada, and almost to date, almost all of those have been distributed. 64 million books. It's just incredible, you know. And so then Prabhupada, dismissed us. And as he walked away, he called me back. So kind, he called me back. He pulled out that pamphlet. He pointed to 64 million and said, "This is all your fault." This is Prabhupada. Let's see. This is you. What do you do? He was so kind to me. It's just, it's just not true. It's just his generosity, his kindness. It's a you Lord and God represent me there, like other leaders. And of course, we went and then when we returned to our stations, our places of preaching and so forth. And then in May, which is a very hot time, May, June, in Vrindavan, Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, and the news came that he was very sick and that he might pass away. So I went there and spent that time there with him, and we had 24-hour kirtan. We signed at different times of the kirtan, and after about a month, Krishna came there, Prabhupada's sister. Tarini was her initiated name. Krishna means like auntie. We used to call her that. And she loved Prabhupada so much. She was so proud of him. She was an initiated member of Bodhi. And so she cooked for him. And he couldn't eat anything. He was very thin at the time, so she cooked for him. And she cooked what we eat tonight. The burnt bottom subject. She did a little better than, a little trouble because we cook up for too many people, but anyway, it's burnt. So she cooked that for him with the puri, that was the worst thing you could probably eat from health point of view. Prabhupada could not eat what she cooked for him. So he ate a little bit. And then we thought he was cured, Krishna was cured him, that's it, So anyway, we all had responsibilities for his mission. So most of us went back, and it looked like Prabhupada's health was maybe turning the corner and he's going to get better, we thought, but didn't get better and got worse. And then in September, again, the news came that Prabhupada was very close to passing away. So I went there again, and Prabhupada was so emaciated compared to when I'd seen him last. He expected living on charnamrita, 3 drops of charnamrita. He would take it, and then he would just wash his hands, like a perfect Brahman. It's like unbelievable to see his control, the control he had of his senses, and in every spare moment of energy that he had, picked the phone. And what was he doing? He was giving the purports to the Brahma Mohan Leela in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the Satyarasa center of the Bhagavatam, the Brahma Mohan Leela. Krishna's calf herding and just about to turn into a cow herder. It's like Satyarasa hits the stage there of the Bhagavatam in a huge way, explosive with the picnic, and the Brahma comes in, and all the cowherd boys are duplicated by Krishna. No, it's quite extensive. It's about 3 or 4 chapters that the whole thing covers, right? And it goes into Boganda Leela, Krishna becomes officially the cow herder, and so forth. So Prabhupada's writing about that's what he's absorbed in, dictating on the phone for every spare, moment that he had energy to do anything. And we had 24-hour kirtan. I had the 1 o'clock till 3 in the morning shift. One morning I was there chanting, and it was just me and Prabhupada, and the Prabhupada's assistant was, there and in and about and so forth. So Prabhupada didn't have a lot of melodies that he chanted from the mantra. They were basically they were really straightforward. They weren't like fancy. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was not like into too much of that, he didn't want music to take over. Chanting had precedence. So there I was with, Pericartos chanting the Prabhupada. So I just took the one melody that he chanted, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Rama. Oh, could listen to it forever. I remember that tape, you know, I was just before I was initiated. Or yeah, I was joined the preaching center. And we were told if the chapati is successful, it would puff up, you know. Listening to that song and seeing that chapati pop up, I made it, you know. I accepted. So anyway, I was chanting like that, and I was thinking, I just want to chant again, like just for Prabhupada's pleasure, and I want to be bona fide. I want my kirtan to be bona fide. So I'm chanting. This is a mantra, a melody that came from Prabhupada's own heart, you know. So that was my thinking about it. I just want to be connected to the parampara, and here Prabhupada was potentially, you know, leaving the world at any time, and I wanted to be connected to the Guru Parampara. That's the that's the lifeline. Forgive me, but it is the friggin' lifeline. That's it, you know. That's like if you go in the jungle and you fall in the dry well, how do you get out? Well, you got to call, right? And somebody's got to throw you a rope. And they say, hold on to it. And when they pull you out, you don't go, boy, I sure held that rope pretty good, didn't I? They don't think like that. You think, you saved me. I said, well, you called, you know. I mean, you held onto the rope. You saved me. That's what it is. That's the fact. What we get, yeah, we hold on to the rope. We have to make an effort. But the effort, a million, zillion times over, would not compare to one atomic particle of the result. What is actual bhakti? What is a land where the name recedes to the background and takes the form of Lila Seva? Gives you your form to participate in that's suitable for that. There's nothing you could do that would equal the math of it. It's just grace. So anyway, I was chanting and I just wanted to be connected to the lifetime. I must have thought, well, you know, what's next? These are, you know, Prabhupada could go at any time. So Prabhupada sat up. And he looked at me. Again, he heard my heart. And he just looked at me and nodded. And I just felt he's assured me that I will make that connection. And I didn't put it all together, you know, and it was just like, wow, it was very profound how it would play out. But then a short few days afterwards, my godmother, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, asked Prabhupada, if he should pass away, how would we perform the funeral? Because we don't know, he never taught us that. You know, he taught us how to do a marriage, how to do an arti, how to do this, that, you know, how to do the funeral. He said, for that, you can call Narayan Maharaj in Tirobhava, who presided over Prabhupada's sannyas, the ritual, and so forth. So then Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, Prabhupada, it was a kind of a bold question, I thought. I was massaging Prabhupada's feet at the time. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, Prabhupada, if after you leave, is there anybody else that we can consult with? And he said, for philosophy, my God would be our Srila Maharaj Navadvip. This is the last thing Prabhupada said about Srila Maharaj. And the first thing he ever said about it to us was in a letter to Chitananda, who was asking if there's anyone he could take shelter of as a Siksha Guru, because he was in India for some time and Prabhupada was in America and he was feeling the need of some association. And Prabhupada wrote to him and said, yes, my God would be our Srila Maharaj Navadvip, but to speak of what you can benefit from him, I consider him my Siksha Guru. So then, you know, we got introduced at the beginning and the end. That's what he said, you know, about Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj. So when I was massaging his feet and he said, you know, for philosophy, my God, would be our Sridhar Maharaj Navadvip, it kind of went in and didn't come out. Right? I didn't, didn't need to act on it or anything, but it went in. And as it turned out, well, there became a need for that, right? And then when I met Sridhar Maharaj, that kirtan that I was doing, that Prabhupada getting up and looking at me and going, and I realized, oh, he blessed me. I'm connected to the Guru Parampara. This is it. And this is the time where we were looking for the Guru Parampara. Prabhupada had left. Where will we get guidance? And not everybody who he would have liked to have stepped into his shoes and represented him in a way that was nourishing to all of us was able were able to do that. I mean, amongst my godbrothers and so forth. That's a long story. But I, back to Vrindavan, Prabhupada, another day when before he left, I was massaging his feet, and he said to me, he said, you know, you are a very intelligent boy. He said, so you should go back to the United States and preach. And so, you know, I followed him for months before he left. And so I came back. And so he wanted. Meanwhile, you know, after 1 month, he left in Vrindavan. He just came to me. I was in charge of like 60 brahmacharis at the time, so it was a big responsibility. I think Prabhupada must have had that in mind. But in Vrindavan itself, of course, Prabhupada to the last day, he was absorbed, as I say, in that Brahma Vimohan Lila. And then even, well, I should say before I left, Prabhupada started to say, I want to go to Govardhan. I want to go, this was Kartik beginning. I want to go to Govardhan. I want to circumambulate Govardhan. Get an ox cart. And he was telling us how I would be on the ox cart. You can put me on there and they take me around. I want to go to Govardhan. He wanted to go to Govardhan, circumambulate Govardhan. He's translating, you know, these Sakyaras Leelas and commenting on them. This is his total absorption at this time. There was a discussion, like the Ayurvedic doctor was there, and some of Prabhupada's personal devotees were personally attending him, and doctor, this is the last thing he could possibly, you know, he can't possibly do this physically. And then some other devotees were thinking, this is Prabhupada, he wants to do it. He could do it. You know, there were like two sides. They were kind of like debating. You know, I was kind of watching. I was just like, oh, you know, I don't think I really took one side. I really like the idea of going around Govardhan, you know, with Prabhupada, but at the same time, the human side of it, which is really very beautiful, you know, saying, we know you're the guru, we know you can do anything, but you stay here, we're going to take care of you. There was also that kind of bhakti, guru bhakti, right? You're close enough that you can tell the guru, no, I'm telling you what to do. It's okay then, right? He loves you. He knows he loves me. She loves me so much that if she says, he says, that's good for me. And they have nothing but, he or she has nothing but my good will, well-being in mind. So anyway, this was how Prabhupada was absorbed. And here, to go back momentarily, I know this is long, so I'll try to bring it to a close. What Prabhupada is saying, it corresponds, of course, with what the main line here. He says, Kumara Nilani by Abrasesha Gopai. Oh, my dear friend, bye. In your company, I'll experience great joy. In the early morning, throughout the day, he's really saying there's more than what's in this translation. It's not the best translation, but in the early morning, I'll wander throughout the whole day, he's saying, through all the pastures and the fields, herding cows with you, running, frolicking, Sridhar said, somersaulting on the ground, in great sport, in many forests of Braj, rolling on the ground in spiritual ecstasy, say Neen Kavi Havi more. When, oh when will that day be mine? So this is Prabhupada, he's aspiring for this. He did the Sharanagati, and this is his ambition. This is very powerful. And in the end, see the situation, what he wanted, what he was talking, what he was doing, and where he was expressed his feeling. I want to go to Govardhan, I want to do the circumambulation and celebrate like a Gopa, practically speaking. And so Prabhupada left in this mood. And of course, when he left, Narayan Maharaj came, showed the way for the Samadhi, and it was very inspiring to the devotees that were there, which by Narayan Maharaj. And then it was appropriate, Prabhupada was sat up on a palanquin and taken through the streets of Vrindavan with Sankirtan. And every man, woman, and child came out to offer respect to Prabhupada. I mean, what he meant to Vrindavan, even just economically, in just the most ordinary sense, all the way up to the highest spiritual ideal. They knew. No one comes to Vrindavan without going down the Bhaktivedanta marg from the rest of the world. And Pudipad Sridhar Maharaj, of course, had been asked by Prabhupada wants to write a pranam mantra for him, but then Prabhupada wrote his own. Later, Govinda Maharaj reminded Sridhar Maharaj of this. This is after Prabhupada had passed away. Sridhar Maharaj said, yes, we should write it. So Govinda Maharaj wrote it, and then Sridhar Maharaj edited it. And there, Prabhupada wrote his own and said, he's going to destroy Mayavad and impersonalism in the Western world. And Govinda Maharaj wrote it, said, he's a Shakyavesh, he's empowered by Nityananda Prabhu, and he brought Krishna consciousness to the East and the West. Because Chacha Prabhupada says, I'm from the East, and he brought it here too. What he did to us, what he showed us, about our own tradition, Gaudiya Hindus, about what the American boys, girls, Europeans, showed us. We had something that we didn't realize that we had. And so for Gaudiya Vaishnavas also, he showed us that, well, Mahaprabhu said, my name will be heard in every town and village. I thought, well, I don't know if that's going to happen or how, or he did it. He took it everywhere. We are so proud for what he did for Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So this is our illustrious, lineage. We are all connected to Prabhupada. All of us, we're here by his grace, the grace of Bhakti Siddhanta, that we heard, who ordered him, who gave shape to the vision of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, our Bhakti Vinod Parivar, and all of Vrindavan, as they say, they named the road Bhakti Vinod Marg. It was, I wasn't there, but there's some films of that and so forth. It's just very touching. So in this way, we've taken too much of your time, but it's time well spent. Said something about the life of Prabhupada on the day of his disappearance that we're commemorating. May see Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Tirobhava Mahotsava Titi ki jai. O Bhaktivinoda ki jai. O Premanande. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhudeva cha. Bottom subject.